I always dance when
I know
when
you
our
do.
song is on. Welcome to Happy Hour, everyone. It's Victory Monday. We've had a lot of those this season. Very blessed, very blessed. We're going to talk about the Packers' win over the Eagles yesterday. It was a real interesting game. Pretty fun to watch, I'd say. Not the most stressful of the season's games. And maybe look ahead a little bit to this coming weekend with the Lions. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining in the chat. Good to see ya. Bring your questions for us at the end. So what's up, Maggie? How you feeling?
Feeling good. I love Victory Monday. It's my favorite Monday of the week.
Yeah, well, if you realize that it's Monday.
Which we didn't until
Neither of us figured out. Like we watched a football game yesterday. We should have known it was Sunday. Yeah, Packers won 30-16.
Yeah.
Was the final score. Yeah, it felt like a larger margin than that, to be quite honest with you. Packers still somehow putting up 30 points no matter what. And yeah, great win. Kind of a more, I think, complete game. There are a few snafus out there that we'll talk about, but a nice complete game. Our defense, Maggie. You want to talk about your man, your boy, who retweeted you today? If no one saw, Zadarius Smith retweeted Maggie today. It was the best day of our lives. I'm pretty sure my entire timeline was everybody asking Maggie if she was okay. And
sweaty for a couple minutes there. But.
And Zadarius Smith has now reached double-digit sacks in both of his seasons in Green Bay, which I don't think anyone had any doubt, but it's still just a phenomenal feat that we have to acknowledge and appreciate because, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it last week too, where the numbers are still just as good as last season. The pressures are a little less, but, kind of his season, and not that it's underrated, but he had tweeted and saying, don't snub him again for the Pro Bowl. So if you haven't voted yet for the Pro Bowl, Zadarius Smith would like you to remember his name. Watt just got a sack a little bit ago in this game, so he's up to 12 now on the season. But then there's only Aaron Donald at 11, and Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, and one other person are tied for third with 10.5, I think, from the Saints. So, yeah, I mean, it was one of the better games for this Packers defense. And yes, it was the Eagles offensive line, which is just banged up to high hell, but 28 total pressures on the game, 7 sacks, 4 against Carson Wentz, 3 against Jalen Hurts. So just a really, really good holistic performance from the defense.
It was so fun to watch them do that because, we had games like that last season. Well, 7 sacks, I think, for anybody, no matter what team you are playing, is something that needs to be commended because that's a ridiculous amount of attacking the quarterback. And they came from everyone, right? I think Z and Preston, Kingsley Keke had 2. I believe Rashawn Gary had 1.5. But they all got involved. Kenny got involved in the pressures. Everyone was just...
Dean Lowry,
right?
Pressures.
Yeah. Just big game for our entire defensive front, which is so exciting. Like, good. I'm glad everyone's getting involved. It was nice to see Kingsley Keke back in the mix there because he had a nice sort of beginning of the season where he was showing some flashes. Now he's back. And yeah, I mean, look, we took advantage of a really, really banged up offensive line, but good. We should. And we attacked 2 different quarterbacks.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, coach speak is always stack successes, and that's what this defense has been able to do. So, I mean, I thought it was really interesting, when it came out that Zadarius Smith and Kenny Clark and Preston Smith had gone kind of to Mike Pettin earlier in the week and said, hey, can we simplify things? Like, let us pressure the quarterback. It's what we're good at. And then they have a season high 28 pressures. And Kingsley Keke said that he felt like the defense had its best week of practice. And once they start emphasizing those things, he said something about, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but just that this is such a talented defense that they're all able to create pressure and kind of wreak havoc. And, that's especially now pushing towards the playoffs. That's exactly what you want to be happening. Darnell Savage. Go ahead.
We're going to talk about the secondary.
You want to wait. You want to hold off.
No, I feel like we've been saying this all season, right? Like, it's not a personnel issue by any means. Like, we have the talent, even if it's not, our first round picks, but we have the depth guys who can also get their jobs done well. Yeah. That's why we're there. That's why we re-signed them. So yeah, I'm really glad whatever conversation that they had. I appreciate a lot the respect that Mike Pettin has for his players to say, all right, guys, I hear you. Let's do it. Let's try it. And obviously it worked. I think that says a lot about just like the way that the players and coaches interact with each other on this team as well. Just like the collaborative effort. Yeah, awesome. Great. Love it. Zadarius Smith retweeted Maggie today. So go and look at it and get excited because we were excited. It was a good morning. Yeah. So Taylor, let's take it next step. Before we hop into the secondary, I want to just talk about Kamal Martin real quick.
Yes.
Because he's everywhere. He you can tell that he still has a little bit of that sort of like football IQ to catch up on. Sometimes he doesn't exactly know where to be at the right time. And that makes sense. He's a rookie, but his just like raw athleticism and his sort of dog mentality is something I don't think this defense has had at his position in a very, very, very long time. And I appreciate the way that he attacks ball carriers, the way that he does. And I think, unfortunately, we may have lost Raven Green to a season-ending injury. It happened on the unfortunate Jalen Reagor punt return. But I think that the silver lining, if you want to look at it that way, is that might mean that we see some more Kamal Martin on the field in that role, which I think would be very exciting and also well-deserved from a player who's shown up since he came back from knee surgery.
Yeah. And Matt LaFleur had said pretty much what you said too, where Kamal Martin is one of those guys that he kind of lumped Raven Green or Darnell Savage in the same category where he was like, they're young ascending guys and they want it so bad. And they're so smart that they just, sometimes you run the risk of doing too much. And I think that's what we saw on that attempted tackle for loss. Like he was blowing up plays and he was so close to getting a couple of them. And if he just kind of stays in his lane in a couple more of those, he's got all of the tools to be such an explosive player. And I, was hard on Christian Kirksey last week. I thought, we would all agree that it was probably his worst game. I thought he looked better this week.
Yeah.
But if Kamal Martin and Chris Barnes kind of continue their ascension upwards, it's hard to think about Christian Kirksey coming back for a second season.
Yeah, it's interesting, like watching the two of them on the field at the same time because they're very different players, very different inside linebackers. And Kirksey is and I get it, right? He's older, right? He's got age. Unfortunately, not on his side, but Kamal is just and injury, right? So many injuries, but Kamal is just so much faster. He just flies around the field, and it's hard it's to the naked eye watching the game, not even watching the tape back, you can see it.
Yeah, it's really noticeable. And I don't remember who said it on Twitter, but somebody had kind of, questioned rhetorically if some of these injuries were the reason for Kirksey kind of lacking a lot of that explosiveness that he used to have. And it kind of feels that way. I mean, he's still young enough. He's the same age, I think, as the Super Smith Bros. And, he still has a lot of playing potential, but I think that they're going to have to be smart about where they use him. I was honestly a little surprised that his play in coverage was not called PI when it happened.
Me too.
So
not saying anything about it, but me too.
Sneak that one under the radar there.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you mentioned that quote that Matt LaFleur had, because I was actually, I was thinking about that more for Darnell Savage, is the idea that LaFleur was saying with a lot of these young guys, right? Like they're out there, they want to prove themselves, love it, but there's a certain level of actual like patience that aids you when you're on the field and like understanding, like you said, your lane and your role and just kind of waiting, like Matt LaFleur said, for those plays to come to you. And I thought that Savage had like kind of an up and down day. He just slipped. It looked like Lambeau was a little slick maybe yesterday, but he slipped and obviously blew a coverage that gave Dallas Goedert, I think it was Dallas Goedert, a pretty big, like 40-yard gain. Yeah. But then he comes back with like one of the most athletic interceptions I've seen a Packer player have in forever. And it really, that interception really sealed the game. That was it. After that, we had the 77-yard touchdown by Aaron Jones, and that was the dagger. The game was over by that point. I think there was only it was after the 2-minute warning, I believe. So all we needed was a first down, and we were back on offense and we could kneel it. So it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I think those are the kinds of plays from Darnell Savage. And again, like a beautiful day from Jair Alexander, as always, that shows like, Goot has made some really good choices with his first round picks. And those two guys to build a secondary around, plus Rashawn Gary ascending in this year, we've got a really nice, solid foundation of young guys on this defense that, like you said, if we can't bring Christian Kirksey back, or the Smith Bros end up fulfilling out their contracts, we have a young core that will be on this team for quite a while.
Yeah, you kind of started. I was biting my tongue talking about the draft and how you have to give players some time, and they're not always going to return dividends on the very first snap of their young careers. But I think that's exactly what we're seeing. Kingsley Keke, Jay Sternberger unfortunately has a concussion, but he's made a couple plays this season. So a lot of these younger guys are really contributing. And I think Kingsley Keke was the biggest example yesterday. Rashawn Gary, you mentioned his 1.5 sacks already. Darnell Savage, career high 3 interceptions on the season happening in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There's a lot for this team to build off of.
There is. Yeah, it's fun to watch them ascend. It's fun to watch like some of the flashes that you've seen over their time on the field, like come together more and more into like full game performances as time goes on. And that's the kind of trajectory you want those players to be on. It's not going to be a, like you said, like immediate first game, like they're perfect. Like it takes time. Yeah, I thought Kevin King also had a really nice game. It's so hard for me to watch and think like, are you pricing yourself out of Green Bay now? Are you not coming back? What is Kevin King's future? I haven't figured it out. I don't know. But we gush about it all the time, but like our core 4 back there, I think they just play so well.
Yeah, and I think Amos and Savage are a really nice compliment too, from what we've seen. And they're kind of letting Darnell be more free this season, which I think is his ideal role. Somebody on Twitter in my mentions yesterday said that he looked Woodson-esque in moments, which obviously it's premature. Woodson, by all accounts, should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But that kind of free-flowing athleticism in the back of the secondary is really nice. And Amos has had his moments as well. Yeah. I immediately DM'd you when this happened, but the Jair posturizing his guy and then looking at
don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
I love that attitude from this Packer secondary. And you see it kind of with your front 7 with guys like Z. They're obviously loudmouths, but then to have a guy like Jair and Kevin on the opposite side that bring that same kind of swag to the back end is fun.
They bring that energy. I think that the Charles Woodson comparison is like, wow, that's a little early. I like that. It's a little early. No, but it's interesting because I think Darnell is versatile in that way, right? Like he played actually the majority of his snaps in college as a slot corner. Yep. So he does have the ability to do a lot more than just be a free safety. But yeah, I don't think we've had this kind of like aggressive, you're not getting the ball past us, no fly zone attitude since that 2010 Super Bowl team. It's the last one that I can think of that really like this replicates a little bit in just like from an attitude perspective.
Yeah, and I didn't look at snap counts too closely or kind of play breakdowns. I don't know if you noticed, but didn't really see any 3-man rushes, and I saw a lot more press man, which I really appreciated. There was one instance where Z dropped into coverage and kind of passed off his guy to the safeties. And then it was, I think, a Dallas Goedert reception, or it was a tight end reception for like a first down, which again, why are you dropping an edge rusher into coverage? But beyond that, I thought that the defensive play calling was pretty nice, except for, I guess, the Jalen Hurts 4th and 18.
Yeah, that was tough. But what are you going to do? Like that, the other team gets paid too, I guess, right. is my response to that, because as a whole, I think our defense played really well. I was wondering this actually, and I'm curious your thoughts. Like, I agree. I saw a lot less 3-man rushes, which thank you, Pettin. And a lot more press man, which as we've seen with the stats, like Green Bay is top 5 when they're playing in man coverage and, bottom 5 when we're playing in zone. But and there's something to be said with choosing either one, right? Based on like what the offense scheme is and their players. But do we think that like since the Eagles just don't have that many weapons, that it was easier to play man coverage because they just knew exactly who they had to cover.
I think that's for sure part of it. And I think that we've kind of seen Pettine dictate his scheme depending on who they're playing. And I think you see a lot more base against teams like the Texans where, Deshaun Watson is more mobile. And so I do think that that's a huge part of it. But as I was watching the whole time, I was just hoping that this was going to be a building block because I think that we saw so much like really good schematically from Mike Pettine.
I hope so. I hope so. We'll see. We will see. Well, we're playing the Lions next week. And I mean, if there's 3 teams that we know through and through, and we know how to beat through and through because we do it all the time. And that's the Lions, the Bears, and the Vikings. So hopefully we can take this performance and replicate it against the Lions team that's like just as bad, if not worse. Even though, did they end up winning this weekend? Beating the Bears?
They did beat the Bears. Yep.
Oh,
it was like last second.
Bears fans. Oh yeah, AP had the touchdown. I do remember.
And the Bears were leading by like 2 scores at one point, which is classic Bears. But
good job, Lions. All right. Anything else you want to talk about as it relates to defense?
I think just, you said the other team gets paid too. And I think that is a big part of it. Like if you look at the point total, it maybe seems like the game was closer than it needed to be. But without, that punt return for a touchdown, it was still 30-10. Yeah. And we saw again, this was an Eagles team that kicked a field goal early. They had a couple explosive runs that the Packers were able to contain. And then outside of the 4th and 18 conversion, this game theoretically could have ended 23-3, 33. So I think, again, from Mike Pettine, you see a little bit of softer coverage there when you're up by 3 scores. So I think that was a big takeaway. And yes, the Eagles are not good comparatively to some of the teams that the Packers have seen this season, but we're still seeing the idea that the Packers aren't taking their foot off the gas as much as we kind of worried that they might going into the season against certain teams.
Yeah, agreed. I thought it was a really nice performance. Obviously, this Eagles offense isn't very good, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, because like you said, when you take away the punt return, which obviously isn't Mike Pettine's fault, we're going to talk about special teams there. Someone needs to teach J.K. Scott how to tackle.
I'll do it.
Yeah,
I will go to Green Bay.
Mr. Scott, we have a lesson. It's called tackling.
He lived next door to Hunter Bradley. Hunter Bradley should know how to teach him how to tackle.
Yeah, I don't know. But you're right. When you take that away, I think they missed the extra point at some point in there
Crosby
too.
Blinked one.
No, I mean the Eagles.
Oh, the Eagles did too. They both blinked once.
They both joined. Lambeau's windy. What are you gonna do? Yeah, so when you take that away, right, he gave up 10 points. He gave up a field goal and a touchdown. I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I'll take it. All right, so let's flip and talk about this beautiful offense because there's so much to talk about. Namely that Aaron Rodgers had yet another milestone because this is just a ridiculously historic season, and the man that we all root for every Sunday for the past 13 years has reached 400 touchdowns in his career, the fastest quarterback to do it ever. He's also the only quarterback in the NFL to have 5 seasons with 35 plus touchdowns.
Yep.
So it's another just, notch in the belt there. Another, record that he holds. He's amazing.
He also, I saw today, was the first quarterback to hit 50,000 passing yards, 400 touchdowns, and 3,000 rushing yards, which I haven't verified, but I did see that today. So
he's ridiculous. We are just the luckiest people in the world to have had this quarterback. Like there's something about him, and I know that the Super Bowl rings are like the only thing that's like anyone holds against him, but he quite possibly is one of the best to ever play this game.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just want to talk a little bit about just that moment too, because, I think we're also seeing that the Packers have had some incredible wide receivers over the course of years, right? A few Hall of Famers, a few that are obviously in the Packers Hall of Fame. I think in our lifetimes, Jordy, and the Jordy to Rogers connection was one that's always like kind of put on a pedestal and said like, this is the best. And I think honestly, Devontae and Rogers have eclipsed that at this point. It's hard to argue, right? Like that touchdown pass that was 400 was Devontae Adams' 200th, which is just what? Like he just seems like still like a young spring chicken, and he has 200 touchdowns. He's not. I know that he's a vet. He's been in the league, but like, wow. He's had a touchdown in 7 straight games this season. If you look at his stats too, like he missed what, 3 games? 4 games?
Yeah,
2 games?
2 games. He's played 10 games.
So he has stats better than almost every wide receiver in the league that's played the entire season.
It's not DK Metcalf, basically.
Basically, yeah. Like he is just otherworldly. And their connection has become something that and we were talking about this pre-show too, right? Like it's not just, okay, we know he's amazing off the line. We know he's an incredible route runner. And now he's becoming just a ridiculous contested catch wide receiver. And like, how do you stop someone who's elite at all 3 of those things?
Right. And I think the most fun part about this season too is it was so special. There's so many milestones for this team as a whole. Like a couple weeks ago, we saw Big Dog obviously catch his 400th reception, Devontae Adams 500th reception, Aaron Rodgers set his milestones, and they're still climbing. Devontae Adams is in categories that only Hall of Fame wide receivers are in right now. Like it's very, very exclusive company, and he has tied his career high in touchdowns already with 13. Like you said, missing 2 games. So he's only played in 10 games. He has 13 touchdowns.
There's 4 more games.
And he's like 350 yards away from eclipsing his career high, which is like 1,368 or something like that. So it's his second 1,000-yard season, which, seems like not a lot for him when he's ended at 997 2 or 3 times, but he just is putting up some absolutely insane numbers, and he's blowing all of his personal bests just completely out of the water.
Yeah. I mean, it does make sense that Aaron Rodgers is having a career season, so therefore his number 1 wide receiver is also having a career season. Those things make sense. But at the same time, it's just what the 2 of them are doing together is not taken for granted, I guess is the best way to describe it, because it's just it's not going to be replicable. And I hope that, like, at least when I'm watching, I'm reminding myself, like, this is special.
Yeah.
This is not normal.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of it, I feel like, was Devontae kind of biding his time. And that's, I loved Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb and James Jones and Greg Jennings. And that's no disrespect to any of them. I thought the Jordy Aaron connection was fantastic. But to me, Jordy was always kind of the deep ball guy. Like they always had that back shoulder throw. And that was like their bread and butter. And I think kind of what we're seeing with Devontae is his bread and butter is just being a fucking awesome wide receiver. Like he can just do everything. And that's what's so special. And, I put it on Twitter. Everyone said that, like, the fact that Devontae got 400 was really special. And I think it was also kind of funny that he got 200 and that was his first career touchdown. I feel like that kind of set the trajectory there for the 2 of them, and just kind of solidified kind of how special that relationship was going to be.
Yeah. And I think that moment too of Devontae having like the awareness to keep that ball and give it to Aaron and let them have that, like, just, moment in the end zone. I think it was James Jones who tweeted like, "Oh, I can't believe he remembered. I got Rogers' 100th and I threw it in the stands." And it's a bond. It's definitely a bond. But there are tons of other players and plays that we need to talk about. Even though I think we could go on and on and on about this for forever. Yes, I did also love Alan Lazard crowning Rogers. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
I think the catch that everyone was talking about today, because he had so many, but just that 4th quarter deep in your own end zone. I mean, the ball is on Matt LaFleur. Like every week, I think we say this is one play where you're like, can't believe Matt LaFleur did that. And to call that and then have Devontae Adams come down with that with like 3 defenders around him is just...
It's crazy.
When I was like, oh, he's going to drop that. And then he got up with it and I was like, he did what?
Well, did you see Aaron Jones said that he was running with a defender from the Eagles and the Eagle went, "Oh, that's an interception." And Aaron Jones went, "No, it's not." And they just kept running.
I didn't see that. No, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. That's I mean, yeah, that's Aaron Jones knowing who we're dealing with here. So speaking of Aaron Jones, also had a great day.
Career game or career touchdown.
Was it? What number was it?
Longest of his career, 77-yarder.
So many milestones.
I think he also became the first Packer in team history to have 2 75-yard plus touchdowns in the same season. So,
this team.
Check it off.
This team. Yeah, so that touchdown was amazing. Obviously sealed the game pretty much. That was the dagger. But I think that more than just the fact that it, amazing 77-yard touchdown is, I felt like that just epitomized what this Packers team is, which is everyone getting in on this to make sure that like we score and win. You've got MVS blocking him the whole way down. David Bakhtiari is hustling all
16 miles an hour.
That's so crazy. Like all like 300 plus pounds of him, like booking it. Even Aaron Rodgers is running, like hit a block on his way down. It just, their team.
Yeah. And they said it on the broadcast too, which I think it was Jim Nantz who said, like, now look what's going to happen. If they score a touchdown, they're all going to celebrate as an entire team. And like they asked Devontae Adams about it, and I loved it. He said that the team this year, because they feel like they only have each other, there's not as many fans in the stands, if any fans at all. Their mentality is BYOJ, bring your own juice, and you get the other guys around you hyped up. And Matt LaFleur said the same thing. Like he had said, like the blocking from MVS, he didn't have a catch that entire game, but the way that he sold out and had so many key blocks to keep Aaron Jones, alive in that 77-yarder, it's just, he literally used the word epitome. So I like that you said epitomizes, but he said that that's the epitome of a team game is kind of what we saw.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you almost feel like, I watch a lot of football. We watch, all Sunday, but obviously don't pay as much attention, but there's something about, and like, that not every team treats each other that way. Not every team has their all pro left tackle running almost 17 miles an hour down the field to make blocks for our 5'9" running back so he can get in the end zone. Like that's just, and these are the players that you build your team around, and that's what the Packers do. And you messaged me right after that, or right this morning, maybe. I don't know what day it is.
What day is it?
What day is it? But you messaged me at one point with a stat, and it was like, we have to pay Aaron Jones now, right? And I think we say that like almost every week after he does something like he just did, which is like, how do you let a player like that go?
Yeah, he's averaging, I think it was 5.1 yards a carry. And obviously, that's for his entire career, not for the season. That's just his career yardage. And he's in contention again with a lot of Hall of Famers, and nobody's calling Aaron Jones at this point in his career Hall of Famer, but you can't really ignore the numbers. And, there are a lot of contributions to that. The Packers have one of the best blocking wide receiver cores in the league, one of the best offensive lines, but he just feels like a special player again. Yeah.
This is so
and he needed that chug.
Yeah.
He's probably dehydrated after that run, honestly. So
yeah. Probably went home and chugged a few. Yeah, he is. He is a special player. And, we saw him get involved a little bit more in the passing game last night too, which is like exactly, I think, what makes him like a well-rounded back is like he can rip off a 77-yard run, have like the body awareness and the spatial awareness to stay in bounds. And it wasn't just a straight shot. He was weaving around defenders. And then also, make a ridiculous catch where he gets tackled like at the ankles, still gets a first down out of it. Just it's special. It's special.
And I think that's what's so hard. And we've seen it with this Packers team where you find these mid-round guys like David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones, and they become such key role players for your team. And that's why the Packers pay their guys. That's why they didn't bring in Will Fuller or Robbie Anderson. And it wasn't for a lack of trying in some instances, but if you can rent a player for a couple games, or you can take care of your own, and you don't have to teach the chemistry to Aaron Jones with this locker room, and you don't have to teach David Bakhtiari. And I think that's what makes this team so special. And, Aaron Rodgers had made a joke about how maybe he'll hit 500 touchdowns before he throws 100 interceptions. And that's one of the things he said, because obviously he doesn't like to live in the hypotheticals. Anyone that watches his pressers knows that about him, but that was his takeaway, was just that he's enjoying this season and these moments so much that, as fun as it is to think about the next milestone, what matters right now is that this team is 9-3 and they're in contention to be the number 1 seed and host an NFC Championship game. And
they are. All they need is to have the Saints lose a game on a week where they win. And that's very feasible. The Saints are about to play the Chiefs, so good luck to you. And but yeah, I think that it was last season where, and this stuck out to me very much, when Rodgers was like, look, like I've padded my stats. I've got them. I've got the records. All I care right now is that we win football games. All I care about right now is winning, and potentially getting another Super Bowl ring. And I think that he gets to just play and enjoy playing without thinking about any other factors and just play to win. And obviously when he plays to win, he plays like he's putting up stats that he is this season. But it's interesting. I think like this trope all of off season was, oh, Matt LaFleur in his second year with Matt Ryan, he brought him to an MVP, but we were like, oh, haha, maybe it'll happen with Rodgers again. And I think there was some level of like, yeah, maybe that'll happen, but nobody in their right mind would have predicted that Aaron Rodgers would have the season that he is. And I think I think coaches that play with Rodgers don't get enough credit, because Rodgers is Rodgers and he's a Hall of Famer and is one of the best to ever play. But like, you have to give so much credit to Matt LaFleur with coming in and bringing this team to 9-3 and bringing out in not just Rodgers, but bringing out Lazard and Jay Sternberger and Robert Tonyan, who's having a career year. He has 8 touchdowns. Our undrafted free agent tight end has 8 touchdowns, and he schemes guys open. We saw an amazing, Malik Taylor, I think, had 1 catch yesterday, but it was a beautiful catch, right? Like he's doing this and he's getting out of the players what they're like. What am I trying to say? He's their best. He's getting the yes. Thank you. He's getting them to play to their full potential. That's exactly what I was thinking. We are on the same page.
Well, and we talked about that with the end of Mike McCarthy's career, and it was no disrespect to McCarthy, but it kind of felt like, modern offenses were passing him by a little bit, and he was trying to fit his players into a scheme. And when Matt LaFleur came, it felt like the first thing he did was fit his scheme to his players. And granted, he has guys that can do a lot of things. He's got a lot of versatility in that offense, a lot of weapons, as opposed to fitting the mold receivers. Kind of players. Yeah, but I mean, he's making it work. And I think just the resiliency of the team, and, Aaron Rodgers heaps praise onto Matt LaFleur every chance he gets, and it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel contrived, like he's feeling obligated to kind of give him kudos. It just feels like this is he called him Maddie in a presser today, and it just just that casual kind of bond that I think this entire team has.
Yeah.
And I thought last year's Packer team was really special. And those post-game locker room kind of videos that we would see where, Matt LaFleur is not really a rah-rah kind of guy, but he'd give a speech and then they'd give out the game balls. And it just feels like this team is even more special than last year.
It's a different special, I think. Last year was we had missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. Nobody knew what to expect with a new head coach. And all of a sudden, the culture is different.
Yeah.
And now we're going into this year. I think they're just a lot more solidified and comfortable and confident. There's a certain level of you got some swagger last season, but there were a little bit uglier games. They're so much more complete and so much more confident. And it feels like the right progression that you would want in a second year in an offense like this. But they just they're going through defenses like butter. They're just slicing through them as if it's nothing. We talk about that shot from the end zone. You don't call that unless you feel 100% confident that your quarterback is going to get that ball to your wide receiver. And it's unbelievable. I think this goes to, I think, what I was saying before, which is I don't know if Matt LaFleur will get Coach of the Year, because I think a lot of people put it on, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers is having an MVP season. And how much of that do you weigh out? But I don't think Aaron Rodgers has this MVP season unless the scheme that Matt LaFleur is putting him in is working with, right? So it goes for both of them.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a hard year to be in contention for coach of the year. Mike Tomlin's a name that's getting thrown around.
Wow.
I don't have the score in front of me right now, but they're probably about to be 12-0, staying
Look at
undefeated.
the team that they've played. You and I have talked about this.
We have talked about this. We talked about this actually quite a bit today, but there's so many names that are in contention kind of for coach of the year that it feels like Matt LaFleur is the forgotten man here. And, credit where it's due. There's a lot of really good football teams this season, and this is an anomaly. Like, we're hoping that this season never happens again, right? Like, this better not be the case in 2021 because PJ, I really like that. Kevin Stefanski would be a really good coach of the year candidate.
If the Browns make it to the playoffs, which they likely will,
they will, Perri. They absolutely will.
When the Browns make it to the playoffs.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so the Steelers game, to answer your question, is 14-10. So Washington's in it.
Washington's defense is nice.
Nice. Their front is buddy. It's fun to watch. All right. Anybody have any questions? We'll answer some questions out here. I love that you're all agreeing with us, though. That's fun.
I have a question for you, Perri.
Okay.
Who wins the NFC East? Do you think it's the Giants?
Oh, the Giants, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That wasn't really a hard question.
I really like Joe Judge. I was skeptical about the pick, and I always felt like, well, the Eagles, it's a little sad to see them kind of fall this way after winning a Super Bowl, but I always felt like the Giants didn't have like that much to do to turn it around.
Yeah.
And, like, I think especially living in New York, like, the Giants have always been a good team, right? Like, we've known Eli Manning as the quarterback for pretty much for a long time. And so it's weird to me to see the Giants be bad. And so I think that's why I'm like, my expectations of them being able to turn around are higher, because I also know that their front office and their ownership, the Maras have a winning mentality. Like, they've won 2 Super Bowls right. So yeah, I think it's them. I think I like Joe Judge a lot. I like what he brings. I like how he rallies the troops. They're also missing Saquon Barkley, who's obviously their best player.
Yeah.
I think they likely go out and get a new quarterback. I don't think Daniel Jones is it, but they'll make it to the playoffs this year.
All right. So this isn't a question, but when we were talking about the playoff picture, somebody said stop Derrick Henry. So I guess we didn't really talk a lot about the Packers run game, but I did think, Miles Sanders was going to be a question mark in Boston Scott. And I thought that the Packers run defense held up pretty well. And Kingsley Keke had said that going into the week, when they had a really good week of practice, they emphasized if you stop the run, in turn, you will then be able to create pressure. And I think that we saw a lot of that. And, part of it could be that the Packers got out to a lead and the Eagles never recovered and really had the opportunity to keep running the ball. And I'm biased, obviously, because I listened to the Browns game yesterday and saw that and heard what the Browns did against Derrick Henry. But that mentality of swarming to the tackler, Derrick Henry had a not good game against Cleveland. And I think when you know what's coming and you just create such pressure in that backfield, it's really hard for that offense to overcome. Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about it, because Derrick Henry, I think, is like in a league of his own. He's like a defensive end.
He's going to make his plays.
Right. I think, like you said, it's about like containment and just preparing for what's to come. And I think the opposite of what we did when we lost the Vikings is like, what you need to do to stop that team. And it was to stop Dalvin Cook. And we didn't do that. Like, let's not make that same mistake again against Derrick Henry, because also now this win means so much more than that win does. The Vikings are bad. We're going to win the division. Beating the Titans means more for our playoff seeding now. So learn from your mistakes and go out and tackle Derrick Henry, please.
Yeah, this isn't a question, but before we get to the other couple questions, I think Anthony Rush comes in at a good time. I don't know how much he'll be able to do kind of acclimating to that front seven, but I think a really big loss as well is Tyler Ervin, and he just can't seem to stay healthy this year. Raven Green's a huge loss, but I feel confident now that we'll see Tavon Austin next week. Matt LaFleur had said, despite him being a wide receiver, he was obviously brought in to be a return guy, and he was ready to play yesterday, and they just made him inactive. So I think that, Billy Wynn is definitely an underrated loss. And Raven Green, you mentioned in the beginning of the show, is really kind of significant since he was making a lot of plays in the middle of the field for that Packers defense.
Yeah. It's hard. We lost like a sneaky large amount of players last night. Jay Sternberger's out with a concussion. I think potentially EQ is out. Yeah, it was getting evaluated for a concussion. Those are key players. So hopefully, none of them are long-term problems. But I think we likely lost Raven Green and Tyler Ervin. But hey, that's why we brought Tavon Austin in. So here we go. All right, your dad wants to know if we have any concerns versus Detroit other than special teams.
Go ahead. You start.
Me? Well, I know because I know what you're okay. I won't make the point that you're going to make. I think that division games are always tricky. The Lions are a little bit on like an upswing since their hated head coach got fired. They're kind of juiced up. I don't think that they potentially have a way into the playoffs necessarily, unless they like maybe win out the rest of the season. But we struggle against the Lions historically. We're at Detroit, so they have the home field advantage. And I don't know. Yeah, it's just play clean football against Detroit, and we could beat them.
I want to know what point I was going to make, but
interim head coach.
Okay. Yeah. Somebody asked Matt LaFleur about that in his presser and just said, is there anything different about preparing for an interim head coach when you don't necessarily know their tendencies? And I think we kind of saw that with the Lions coming out and winning against the Bears. And I think we saw the same thing when Mike McCarthy got fired. The Packers came out and played like world beaters against the Falcons for Joe Philbin. But it's not like sustainable success. The Texans looked really good for a couple weeks under Romeo Crennel. So I think that there's like this spark of energy that comes from new teams. But I think after beating the Bears, that spark will have died out. And that's no disrespect to the Lions. But I think that, that would be, I guess, the biggest question mark is how do they respond now that Matt Patricia's gone?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they beat the Bears and that was maybe like the juice up. I think Sean made a good point. There's no fans, which we've seen in the way that affects the Packers a little bit, but I guess if they're feeling like they're bringing their BYOJ. So I don't know. I just, there's something about the Lions. They always pull some like weird stuff against the Packers. It's just always like wonky. I felt that way like last season, week 17. I was like, oh yeah, we'll win this. We have to. We'll get the second seed if we win. And then all of a sudden, like we don't win until a last second field goal. And it's like, are you really going to do this today? You're really going to pull this today? Like Matt Stafford comes out with like a flea flicker and you're just like, well, okay. So yeah, I think just playing like clean, complete football is a easy way to beat the Lions.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we don't really have a ton of questions in here, but what, I guess, are your thoughts then about this finishing of the season? Obviously the Packers have the Lions and they have 2 games at home, Saturday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, Panthers
Saturday Night Football
against the Panthers. They got flexed to Saturday night. Yeah.
Weird.
And theoretically, rumors on Twitter is that the Packers are going to have fans in the stands for both of their last 2 home games. So do you think you said earlier, I think it was before the Bears games, that you thought the Packers could run the table. So is that still?
Yeah, I 100% feel that way, especially after the last 2 games. Like,
I agree.
There's no, yeah, sure, Derrick Henry is scary, but watching what the Browns did to the Titans is we have a blueprint for how to like completely demolish them. I think our offense is just at its like height right now, where I find it very, very. What'd you say?
It's first in the league in points for.
Right. Yeah, I find it over the Chiefs, by the way. That's what that means. I find it hard to just envision a defense that we're about to go up against, any of those defenses stopping this team. The Panthers are, I think, still in that transition as well with Teddy. Is Christian McCaffrey coming back? Are they not? Matt Rule. Like the only threat I see is the Titans, but they also are a beatable threat. And I don't know, to win out and go 13-3 again would be more than enough to win the division, and certainly I think put us in a place to have a first round bye in the playoffs and potentially have an NFC championship game at home, which Aaron Rodgers has never had. And I think having fans in the stands would just add so much more fuel. You know, how much they love, like, this fan base and this team are so connected for so many different reasons. And I think that would just put them over the edge to, like, there's no way they're going to lose with fans in the stands.
Yeah, and the idea of BYOJ, which now is a term that we're going to say on the show constantly, apparently, but bringing your own juice. I mean, if you can't get amped up, if the Packers beat the Lions and the Vikings lose to the Buccaneers, the Packers have clinched the division. So, you know, Aaron Rodgers in his presser said that you always emphasize winning the division first. The Packers are on the cusp of doing that. You know, their arrow is
pretty early too,
and they see the number one seed in their sights. Having that tiebreaker with the Saints, who are on a 9-game winning streak, is significant. And, you know, the Vikings still play the Saints. They play the Bucs. The Saints play the Chiefs. The Vikings historically play the Saints very tough. The Saints don't often win against the Vikings. So the Saints could drop 2. And, you know, even if the Packers drop 1, which I don't want to. I know, I'm sorry, but this, in such a weird season and such a historic season, this is honestly probably one of the better shots that the Packers have had at being or hosting an NFC Championship game.
Okay, so I have a question for you, because I've been debating this with my friends, and I know my answer, and I feel like I know yours. But, like, does the winner of the Super Bowl this season have an asterisk?
No.
I agree. Everyone has the same conditions. Everyone's under the same conditions.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it'd be different if we saw teams having to forfeit games, or, you know, I know we saw kind of some scheduling issues with teams like the Steelers and the Ravens.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, the Steelers are still undefeated, so it obviously didn't affect them too bad. But no, I mean, I don't think it's fair to say that this is an asterisk, because, like you said, these are the same conditions for every team. And, you know, it's the accountability of the coaching staff, the players, they're all under the same restrictions. And
and everyone has, like, the same things that they need to, the same challenges to overcome. And so whether you overcome them better than another team is good on you, basically, is how I view it.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good point too, is just, I don't know about you, but I didn't think we were going to see a full season of football. And the fact that the NFL and the teams have been able to do this, and we're literally talking about a playoff picture, is just a true testament, I guess, to the NFL and the preparation of the league and the teams and their willingness to adapt despite any of the circumstances. So, yeah, I mean, I think
have some
impressive
things to say about the way the NFL has handled the season.
That's
but
fair.
I think I think a lot of credit goes to the teams and the personnel and the players and coaches, like, following the rules as set forth by the NFL, or trying to, and keeping themselves healthy. So, you know, and they played, like you said, we got a full season. There's no shortened season like baseball. There's no bubble like the NBA. You know, they played a regular season through COVID, and that is just so impressive. So impressive. All right. So any other final thoughts on the Eagles, or looking ahead to the Lions?
It's hard. I mean, the comments are saying it too, but, like, you and I by nature are, like, eternal optimists when it comes to the Packers, because at the end of the day, it's football, and it's something that we love and appreciate, and it's a distraction from the mundane, awful things in day-to-day life. And above everything, I will always be a Packers fan, whether they're 0-16 or undefeated and hoisting a Lombardi trophy. But there's so much about this team that's so special, and I just want to encourage everybody to appreciate it. And I know that it's hard to appreciate when seasons end dramatically and tragically the way that they did last season, where you feel like you're kind of riding a high and then it all stops. But we're witnessing, you said it already in the beginning of the show, a lot of history. These are a lot of milestones and records that you get to say that you saw and remember and talk about as Packers fans. So I think that element is what I just want to make sure that everybody takes away from that, because every time that we have a kickoff, I'm just grateful for another week of Packers football.
Couldn't have said it better. I think everyone who roots for this team is very lucky to root for this team, and, you know, not the Jets or the Jaguars. So no, it's true. And I think like it's just an interesting sort of juxtaposition between having just like a really difficult, strange year and then having, a team that's meant to distract you and make you happy and, bring people together and all those things that football does, to have them be achieving what they're achieving this season, which unfortunately there's no fans in the stands. You can just imagine what the roar of the crowd at Lambeau would have been like on that final Devontae Adams touchdown. But but it's been wonderful to watch. Okay, Mark distracted me. I'm sorry, Mark, for making fun of 0-16 teams. I think I'm allowed to do that as a New Yorker. But the Browns are 9-3. Woo, woo.
Playoff Browns.
Playoff Browns. All right. Anyway, thank you all for joining us on this Monday happy hour. We appreciate you. It's Victory Monday, so enjoy the rest of it. We have another football game to watch in like 25 minutes. Yep. So enjoy more football, and we'll see you next week. And go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.